Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today on mental health and machine learning, AI, and reimagining recognition in 2025. My name is Bronson Dameron. I'm the Director of Content at AwardCo, and we have with us today JD Drasbek, and we have Dave Dixon. And I'm going to introduce them a little bit and then let them introduce themselves. Before we get to that, though, please feel free to pipe into the chat and let us know where you're viewing from. It's always exciting to see where you are in the world, and it's kind of an exciting thing to connect with people in that regard. And also, as we're continuing through this webinar and you have questions that you want to pose to both JD or Dave, let me know in the chat. Just ask the question and I will pose it to them both, and kind of so we can have a nice conversation about AI and what it means for mental health in the workplace and all that kind of good stuff. So for now, I will toss it over to JD to introduce yourself, JD, and we'll get going. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bronson. It's wonderful to be here today, and we appreciate the opportunity and excited to learn together about this very important topic that will change your teams. My name is JD Drasbek, originally from the Washington, D.C. area. I'm a former healthcare operator turned leadership development consultant. The mission of healthcare to improve human life. I'm very, very passionate about it. That's why I got in the field. And then shifting towards this mission of helping to build healthy workplace cultures, which in result changes lives, not only your employees, but your personal life, is something I'm also very passionate about. So very excited to learn from my partner today, Dave Dixon. And Dave, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. My name's Dave Dixon. I work at MIT. My title is Head of AI Education and Innovation at Open Learning. I spend all day, every day working with organizations around the world, not just organizations, but governments, government bodies, the military, on figuring out what on earth to do about generative AI, what's good, what we need to be careful of, how to get the most out of it and avoid the bad stuff. And this is such a rapidly progressing and changing and evolving area. The entire space, let alone how it impacts with the human systems, including our mental health, that it means my job is very exciting. I'm always, barely keeping up, but so is everybody else, including at MIT. So it's a fast-moving world, and hopefully we can be helpful today.
That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you for being on this webinar. I really appreciate that. We have a lot to talk about today, and I'd love both of your expertise. So JD, you've got some stats here we want to go over, and then we'll start the discussion.
We'll go ahead and just read these off. When I saw them, I was very, they were eye-opening for me. Some anecdotal evidence and then look at the actual statistics. So we'll go ahead and just read those. 45% of U.S. workers have experienced mental illness in their lifetime. 76 have experienced emotional distress due to work stress in the last 12 months. And then 51% say that emotional distress was severe enough to impact job ability. So wanted to show those statistics to really emphasize the why behind our purpose here today. And then go a little bit later on in the presentation to see what can we actually do, what solutions do we have for this overarching issue across the world. So I want to read this statistic to highlight again a little bit deeper of the real impact that mental health is having in the workplace and in our families. So the American Psychiatric Association reported that unresolved depression accounts for 35% reduction in productivity, which contributes to $210.5 billion a year in the U.S. economy in the form of lost productivity, medical costs, and absenteeism. And then depressed employees miss an average of 31.4 days of work per year. So those are some pretty eye-opening statistics, at least for me, and really again show the really sad case of our status and the stigmas around mental health, and it's a bit sobering. And I'm excited to talk today about the partnership between AI and how we can help improve our own mental health to really change lives. One of the first solutions that the APA also put out was the number one way to improve employee health is to train managers to promote health and well-being. They said that research shows that supervisors and manager training in employee wellness and mental health help supervisors learn how to support employees, recognize the signs of stress and mental health issues, which helps reduce turnover and absenteeism. I know for me personally, I'll just start off with the story of managers and direct supervisors that I've had that were just aware of me. They recognized me. That's a huge part of Awardco, and it's so simple yet it's so powerful. They recognized me for the human that I was. I first learned that principle as a young man, and I'll change names of the story, but it's a dear friend of mine whose son has special needs, and he, at the end, there was a social function going on, and the dad asked his son, how did the event go? And his son was like, well, they didn't see me. All the other kids, they didn't see me. And he was like, what do you mean they didn't see you? Like they were talking to you. They said hi, they acknowledged you. And he said, no, Dad, they didn't see me. And his dad goes on to explain that this sweet friend of mine who has special needs, he did not feel recognized. He knew he was not seen. It was just very superficial. Hey, how's it going? They weren't including him getting to know this sweet friend of mine. And that has impacted me to want to work for people that recognize and see me, and encourages me to also ensure that I recognize all in my life, no matter what walk of life they are in. And we're going to talk a little bit about not only the power of recognizing, but giving recognition and how that affects both parties' mental health. So, Dave, I'll ask you the question as the expert here in the field. What are some ways that AI can help promote mental health in the workplace?
Yeah, so let me step back a little bit and talk about what we're learning about AI and mental health generally. So we talk a lot about AI. To be clear, we're mostly in this conversation going to be talking about generative AI, right? Things like ChatGPT or ChatGPT-like things that are baked into maybe tools you use at work, those sorts of things. So there's an interesting thing going on here because we're talking a lot about platforms like ChatGPT and platforms like Gemini in a sort of almost cold, business-only work type situation. And what we're not talking about, and we're not going to talk a lot about it in this conversation either, but I think it's relevant to this conversation, is what we're not talking as much about is platforms like character AI. So character AI, by some counts, is last year has had a quarter to a third as many views, app downloads, and daily users as ChatGPT, which is one of the most popular websites on the internet now. And all they are is essentially AI-based friends, or girlfriends or boyfriends, a lot of romance. The reason why this is significant is because the things that we're talking about here is, and what you were just talking about, dare to be seen. A big question has been, to what extent can and will people try to fill some of those needs with what I guess you would consider artificial sociality, and to what extent will that have bad effects or good effects? So we're seeing studies in areas like medicine, that when it's a double-blind controlled study, so they don't know, where patients don't know if they're talking to a doctor or talking to an AI, the AI is crushing the doctors in emotional intelligence and bedside manners. It's just way better at interacting with people in ways that make people feel seen and heard, as long as they don't know it's AI. We're seeing those same things across other places as well. We're seeing a big, huge study was done where they took some of the greatest poets. We're talking Shakespeare and Emily Dickinson and everybody who you've ever heard of and had to read in high school. And they put those poems up against AI written poems, just ChatGPT written poems, probably with good prompts, but ChatGPT written. They didn't say which ones were which. And the ChatGPT poems on every single category were listed as more human, more profound, more beautiful, more rich than Shakespeare. And Shakespeare was predicted by most to be more more likely to be AI than the actual AI. I'm going to go through a few of these on here because this is important. This is an important groundwork to lay when we're trying to understand what are the current capabilities of AI, what's it good at, and what's it not good at. We're seeing all these areas where we didn't expect AI to be particularly good. If you are anywhere near my age, I turned 43 3 days ago. If you're anywhere near my age, you might have grown up watching Star Trek, Next Generation, and Data. And Data did not have any emotion until he got an emotion chip. He was basically a computational machine. And what we got is the exact opposite. We got these things that are actually very emotionally intelligent, but mess up on computations. They can screw up the math more likely than they're going to not be able to read the subtle nuances of your voice inflection, because a lot of these, Gemini, for example, you can listen to your voice and pattern what sort of emotions they're sensing in video or all these sorts of things. So in the world we live in right now, there's a danger with this. There's also an opportunity with this. Thank you, Vanessa. And that is that ChatGPT or other AIs like this are actually really good at being really engaging and doing the sorts of things that make us feel seen and heard. And so there's ethical questions in there too. But what that means is that when you're within an organization, you're using these in a way that augments your human social cues. That can be very powerful and very helpful, because the type of things that AI is good at are things like taking unstructured data. So just like chat or conversations or words or anything like that, and paying attention to it and seeing, this is something that this person might be feeling right now, or this is something that a person did that sort of resolved a problem with this other team. All these things that it would be hard for a manager to normally see or maybe even notice, because managers, as you all know, are very hit and miss, like all humans, on how emotionally intelligent they are, let alone how sensitive they are, let alone how much they can just keep track of at the same time. AI is good at all of those things, actually. And so if that's one where it can flag something, you have some sort of system where it brings something up to you and then allows you to, as a human, reach out and recognize somebody for what they've done, that's a very valuable thing. The other question, though, is what do we do about total human replacement? And this one is fascinating because I'll leave the AI boyfriends and girlfriends to the side for a second. Instead, we're going to talk about therapists, because what we're getting now is we're starting to get a trickle of good studies, not just like short little studies, but good solid studies on the impact of mental health when using AI in therapeutic situations, basically ChatGPT with good prompts. And what we're seeing in virtually every single one is that a ChatGPT based therapist that's properly prompted is as effective in some cases as what one study called the gold standard of a human therapist. So this is scary, obviously, because you don't want to just unleash everybody and say, go solve your mental health with ChatGPT, because who knows what'll happen, right? There's a lot of uncertainty there. But there's also a lot of uncertainty with humans, right? You might get a bad therapist who does stupid things and says dumb things also. And so this is a fraught area that's very early. And I am not going to make any medical recommendations or anything else like that right now, except for to say that when people know they're talking to AI and they're doing it with an AI that has been told to basically act like a good therapist, we're seeing categorically positive benefits out of it. Now, that shows a different capability of AI, and in some ways, things that humans can't do. So if I go and talk to a therapist, there is a part of me, right, that might worry on what does the therapist think of me, or be embarrassed if I want to admit stuff. I don't feel that when I talk to ChatGPT, right? And so there are some areas where knowing you're talking to a robot, essentially, can be beneficial. It can make you open up more, share more wholly, those sorts of things. On the flip side, all of that is then, potentially, it depends on how safe you're being with your data. You've got all that right there. If I were to, share all of my inner darkest secrets right now on my ChatGPT, all of my kids would see it because they use my ChatGPT too, right? There's just simple to go into that. So this whole first sort of like splurge of me talking a lot at you is to kind of lay the groundwork for we're starting to learn a lot, and the capabilities there appear to be very significant capabilities, and they're surprising even to us in the field. We're kind of surprised at how robust some of these results are or how positive they seem to be. But you also have cases on the other side. We have one kid who last year committed suicide because his AI girlfriend on Character AI told him to. And he took that seriously and killed himself. And so there's obviously risks too, right? So if you imagine a world where everybody has access to very good, very competent therapy that they're not embarrassed to talk to, then you're imagining something that's probably likely to happen, and something that obviously can have a lot of really good effects. If you're imagining a world where people quit interacting with humans because the robots are always say that they're right and are very sycophantic, you might also be imagining a world that we're headed to, which is obviously not as good. And so there's going to be a balance there. So if you're talking about in the workplace, you need to be stepping back and holistically thinking, what sorts of things is AI good at? Looking at massive amounts of unstructured data and picking out patterns from it, that's something it's great at. Being able to signal to you that this might be a good chance for you to go make a good connection to somebody, or to recognize them for something, that's something it's good at. Using it explicitly to be the one who gives the recognition, unknown, right? Because generally speaking, people hate if they know that like they can tell AI wrote an email to them, it makes them mad. We see like in studies that it makes them mad, but then they want to do it. Right? They want to write their emails, but they are mad when somebody else. We see the same thing on using your phone. Everybody's sure that when they're using the phone in a situation where there's people around them, that they have a good reason to. But when everybody else is using the phone, they judge them for it. We're doing a similar thing with AI. So balancing the human way to interject robots into our social scenes is very untested and new. But the initial feedback we're getting is that there's a lot of latent capability there that we need to figure out ways to unlock to be able to help people be happier. Sorry, that's a long initial kind of speech. But you know, I'm an academic, so you're stuck with me, I guess.
That's actually, that brings up a question I have for you, Dave, that is along a question we got in the Q&A from Amber. Do you think that AI will enhance or detract from organizations adopting more mental health programs?
I think that organizations are always going to be extremely careful about anything they could get sued for. And that's actually going to be a big part of everything mental healthy that comes out in AI. Because there's one, even if you have a study that shows this helps a lot, if one person gets a weird thing from ChatGPT that causes them to make a decision that hurts their life, that person might sue. And so I almost feel like organizations are more likely to be slower than faster on jumping on this. But what's really going to happen is the same thing that we've seen happen in the last 2 years in AI, which is that whether or not organizations officially sanction things, humans are going to do what they want to do with AI. And so the low-level workers are going to do it. So I've seen some studies suggesting, some research suggesting in the last year or two, well, just over the course of the last year, when they're analyzing people's interactions with ChatGPT, for instance, and what are their main things they're using them for. And the first one was like idea generation. I should have pulled this up, but the first one's like idea generation, and the second one's like problem solving, and then summary. And then the fourth one was like life coaching and therapy and things like that. And that was 2024. The exact same study on the exact same thing this year, number one use is life coaching and therapy. And then the work related ones are going below it. So what we're seeing is that people are starting to independently find value out of using these. And from an organizational standpoint, that can be good because they're kind of self-helping themselves. Though on the other side, you're not going to get any credit for that as an organization because they feel like they're doing it. And so any benefit that they get isn't probably going to blow back too much on the organization, but I hope so. I'm not saying I hope that they adopt it in any certain way because we have so much that we still need to learn. But I do hope that this opens up an avenue where everybody realizes that this bottleneck that we've had both in like social shame, as well as just sheer practitioner availability, as well as money/insurance, all three of those are what are keeping people from getting help that might actually help them and be useful to them. And if we actually can have a robust, safe AI therapy type situation that can actually help people with skills and their type, learn the types of skills that can help them through situations they're in, or cognitive behavioral therapy that would be useful for their challenges, that's an unmitigated win to me if we can get there. And I would suggest that I think we're heading in that direction. And so then organizations have to decide what and how they're going to, deal with that. Because the one thing we've learned in AI is that when you do it well, people are happy. And if you do it in a thoughtless way, it blows back in your face. It's that same thing with getting about the emails. If it feels like they're just saying, go talk to a robot because we don't care about you, then that might actually hurt you. Organization. But if it feels like, hey, we have these cool resources, I have great benefits here at MIT that include virtually unlimited ability to reach out, to get therapy, to work with counselors both online or in person, or all sorts of things. If they then added a third option of like, we have this amazing chatbot therapist, I'm actually more like, even though I have those other two as options, because I have those two as options, I feel loved by MIT, but I'm way more likely to use the third one because it's cheaper, easier, faster, all those sorts of things, right? And so then I still love MIT for what they offer me, even though I'm not using it, that much. But I'm using that, but I'm, using the little doodad. So yeah, I hope so. I hope that this ends up being very helpful to a lot of people. I'll tell you, there's another area. Yeah, exactly. Less stigma associated with the AI. And that's going to be, we all talked for days about trying to get rid of the stigma. And I think to some extent that's working. But at the same time, it can almost be like, an athlete who has an injury that's keeping them from being able to run, and then telling them if they would just run better, they would fix the injury, right? They're already like hurting in that area. And you're kind of saying, we'll fix that. And then you can go fix that. It's hard. And so this is one where, there almost is no stigma associated with it because nobody knows and it doesn't judge you. And it's very good at being sort of friendly and caring. And so when I've used it in sort of these more social therapeutic type situations, what is helpful is just giving it a clear little persona. I'm not an expert in therapy, for example, but if I just say something at the beginning, like, I want you to act as a top tier cognitive behavioral therapist who can actually help me using the best and most evidence proven ways, right? And then I go, now we're not just like chatting la. We just suddenly put it into this zone of everything I say, you're going to sort of adopt what you think is the best framework of that. The feedback I get is often very insightful and very useful. Again, this is not like medical advice, but this is something that clearly shows just out of the box it can be that good. And then we're seeing studies that can show that too. Another thing that we're seeing on this, and this is only the beginning of it, and this one actually surprised a lot of us, including the people who did the study, is a big group at like MIT and Wharton and Harvard together. They did this big randomized controlled trial on using AI like ChatGPT at Procter & Gamble to come up with new ideas. And it had lots of really powerful findings that they came out of it. What they did was they divided just under 1,000 people into two groups. One just had to not use ChatGPT, or I think it actually was ChatGPT. One had to not use ChatGPT. The rest of them had used ChatGPT. And then they put them either by themselves or in groups of two. And then they measured them across all sorts of things. And what they found On the outcomes, essentially the people who got to use ChatGPT, the individuals who used ChatGPT had better outcomes or better productivity, better creativity than the teams that didn't use ChatGPT. And there's a lot more like that. But those are some of those powerful ones. But the most interesting one to this one was they also found that the individuals who used ChatGPT were the least stressed and the happiest at the end of the entire activity compared to the people who didn't get to. And the teams that had ChatGPT on their team, so it was 2 people and ChatGPT, were even happier than the individuals with it. And they were by far the most positive emotions in any of the groups and the least amount of negative emotions like stress and anxiety. And so this is another one where this came out like 3 weeks ago. So this is another one where we're starting to see things that we weren't necessarily expecting, but just by allowing them to openly use it, it helped bash through a bunch of things that are usually frustrating about our work. So not only was their work better, but they were less stressed and happier on the back end. So there's promising initial results, but we're still very early in this.
That has a lot of interesting implications for work in general. Like just like measuring happiness, measuring productivity, output, both at the same time. That's incredible.
Yeah, interesting. That's the headline ones in that study were mostly about, how much more productive they were and creative they were and other stuff like that. But then there was this one finding that was buried in there, and I went, that is fascinating. I mean, it's a short time frame in that one. It was like a 1 weekend hackathon. But even at the end of a 1 weekend hackathon, the ones who got to use ChatGPT within it, and the way they did it, they weren't using a special version of ChatGPT, but this might be a good idea for all of you who, at your work, especially if you're in a managerial role, is what they did was they let people use ChatGPT however they wanted, but they gave them of prompts that would help them, that would be good starting places. And then they could adjust those prompts however they wanted. But the difference between having a ChatGPT as a blank book and ChatGPT with a few helpful prompts that have you've done pretty well, and don't force them to just use those. But here's maybe a good place to start in idea generation, or here's something in idea evaluation, or in whatever it is, creative ideation. Giving them those prompts and then letting them go wherever they wanted was a very powerful way to actually help them break through areas that would normally be very frustrating, and feel like they could spend their time on the creative pursuits that they wanted to, and less being constrained by the things they're not expert in, for example.
That
Useful.
That reminds me of one thing. So Awardco has developed and is continuing to develop something we're calling Awardco Intelligence. And it's just the usage of AI to enhance recognition and rewards in the workplace. So one of the ways we do that, in addition to, like you said earlier, one thing that AI is really good at is taking aggregate data and finding patterns. In addition to doing that with all of your recognition data, Awardco Intelligence also will prompt people if they don't know what to say for a recognition. So if it will say, like, you've recognized them for this before, consider maybe like something like this or like this. It doesn't write the recognition for them, but it will prompt them, like you said in this study, that it gave them a prompt, and then they will continue forward and move forward with, just as something as simple as saying thank you to somebody when they don't know what to say. So really interesting usages of AI in the workplace. That's incredible.
Yeah, people want to be able to use AI as a tool to make things happen. And that's often how they're using it in these sort of therapy situations. But they also want to still connect with humans, right? They like that the connection with human is vital. And I have friends who have done really interesting things, like they had their parent passed away, and they were in charge of doing the eulogy, the final words, and worked extensively with ChatGPT. And it wasn't because they wanted ChatGPT to do the work for them and make it impersonal. It's because they cared so much about it. They wanted to get it right. And they're like, I'm not an expert speechwriter, but I want to be able to like really convey, right, the way I want to convey. People who also go, I'm having a fight with my brother right now, or with my mother-in-law, and here's what's happening. What would be here's the email I wrote. Am I attacking them secretly because I'm angry? Give me some feedback. And they'll be like, yeah, you kind of are. Here might be a better way to do it. And it's just what you're talking about. using it to augment your ability to make social connections rather than replacing your ability to make social connections. And you can use it to replace that sometimes too. Like if it's just a formulaic email that doesn't need to mean anything and it doesn't matter if it's an AI, yeah, it can replace you on that. But if it's a chance to actually connect to a human, it can help you do that better if you use it well, and don't just outsource to it.
I love that.
We went to a second slide. Take it over, JD. Lead us to the next spot.
Yeah, well, it just segues perfectly right in. But first off, Dave, just wanted to witness what you said. And what I'm hearing is AI is not a replacement, but it's a partner. And I love that, how we now have another best friend to help us in our life difficulties in the workplace, in the family, in the home. I know for me, and just to kind of echo what you said about mental health in the workplace, we all have different levels of mental health. And I think that's one of the stigmas that I'm very passionate about, is that each and every one of us has good mental health days and we have not great mental health days. So all of us need to focus on our mental health. When I was going to therapy, and as I go to, I'm still in therapy because I'm a big believer in increasing our mental health. I didn't want to reach out to my therapist. There was something going on. I had a big question, and I just put it in ChatGPT, and I was like, hey, these are my thoughts. And it was crazy, the amount of empathy that came back and the response. And I went the next day and I told my therapist just to make sure that the AI, the robot wasn't off the wall. And the therapist was like, yeah, that's great advice. That's really good counsel. So anyways, definitely not a replacement, but a wonderful partner that I personally use in my daily life, work life, and really excited to see what it's going to do for us in the future. On that vein of Bronson, you touched on recognition. OC Tanner came out with a really fascinating study where I'll just go ahead and read it. It says employees who gave recognition in the past 30 days reported significant decrease in the odds of burnout, and who gave recognition, didn't receive, but gave. 57% probable diagnosis of anxiety, 24%, and probable diagnosis of depression, 28%. So Bronson, I'm curious to hear a little bit more about your platform, and it seems like it is drawing around the power of giving recognition and how that will enhance our own mental health.
Oh yeah, I mean, AwardCo is tailor-made for that kind of thing. So at its heart, AwardCo is employee rewards and recognition. But like, why is that even important? A lot of people will say recognition and rewards is nice to have, but I'm already rewarding or recognizing my employees with a paycheck or, a service anniversary or something like that, which is true. But that is also the very baseline of what employee recognition can be. Employee recognition does so much for the ROI and the bottom line of organizations, but it also helps with the mental health, with the support, with the feelings of belonging, with well-being, all kinds of things like that. And we're doing a lot of studies where we found the same thing. We've just completed a study with HR.com that highlights those facts. And Dave, what you mentioned earlier about how MIT has a really good mental health program where you're able to find a lot of these resources, that is employee recognition and rewards as well. It's giving you the opportunity to care for yourself, and there's so many different ways that AwardCo can help with that as well. But recognition at its heart is just people feeling seen. Like you said earlier, JD, of your friend who they don't see me, but recognition is seeing people. And it is way more than just a fluffy nice to have. When organizations make it the core of their HR strategy, it can change literally everything from culture to incentives to how you run programs for, incentivizing performance or sales or anything like that. And it's all just because people at their heart, individuals need to be seen and they need to be appreciated. And maybe that sounds fluffy, but the science backs it up. It just shows that people need even something as simple as a thank you. And AwardCo streamlines that, makes it a lot easier and reduces that burnout and anxiety and depression. And anecdotally, I know it works. I've worked here for a number of years and I've seen it where organizations don't have something like that. not necessarily a Wardco, but just a recognition program versus when they do. And the difference is night and day. And when people don't know what to do with recognition, and they're like, oh, I don't know how to say it, I'm not very good with my words, that's where AI can step in and help you out and prompt you with that, to then just build on what you're already trying to do and make something really incredible out of your rewards and recognition strategy. And that's just the whole linchpin of what a Wardco does. It is the engine that powers everything you're trying to do in your organization as far as culture and incentives and perks and benefits and things like that. So it's pretty interesting just to see the power of recognition alone and see how that benefits individuals on a daily basis.
Bronson, I'm curious, talking about practical solutions, and we're going to talk about ethical considerations as well. One of the fears that I personally have is how you could say, hey, I need a business plan for this, put it in chat, and then it comes up with this whole articulated strategy. So the fear that I have, and I know many others have as well, is the reduction in growth that might come, or limiting our ability to learn how to critically think. So I'm just have a thought, and I think it makes sense. Curious of your insights. Maybe someone who isn't good at recognizing could learn how to better recognize through this platform that you have. So when they're in a human interaction with their family or with a coworker, and they don't have the chat with them, they're like, "Oh, this is what I learned," and then they're gonna learn the behaviors that they should exhibit, and thus actually learn how to actually critically think and recognize people. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that totally does. That makes me think of things like, in a lot of the studies that we've done, we found that there are several key elements to a good recognition, which we have also built into a Wardco intelligence, into our AI. So a Wardco intelligence is not meant to replace recognition that you would give. It is meant to support what you want to say already. So you have to prompt it. You have to say, here is what I generally want to say. Gotcha. And it will then help you craft a message similar to the eulogy you were talking, not that recognition is a eulogy, but similar to the use case you were talking about earlier, Dave. And so, yeah, in a personal interaction, like, once you learn the elements of what makes appreciation powerful, right, something like it needs to be timely. Like, if someone does something, you don't want to recognize them weeks or months later. You want to recognize them in the moment or soon thereafter, because it has more of an impact then. So timely, it needs to be specific. You need to say what specifically you are grateful for, or what you're appreciating them for, so the person knows. And it needs to be a little bit warm if you can do that. Not everybody's good at warmth, right? Like, and if it's forced, then it can feel disingenuous. So you don't want to do that. But there are several key elements, just especially in terms of timeliness and specificity, that can really help people. And in person, if you're not very good at it, but you feel like, oh, I should need to recognize this person, it can be as simple as, I appreciate you for this. Thank you. And that has actually taught a lot of people, both internally here at Wardco and in our client base, that are learning how to make recognition more a part of their life. So it doesn't fully replace that. And I share the same fear. It was like, it kind of pulls away that creativity or that genuine nature. But when done in the right way, it can actually help with your interpersonal interactions too. And I'm sure you've both seen that as you've used AI in your lives and other aspects of your work. But that's something we found here at Wardco for sure.
I love that. I love how it enhances the human interaction.
We have a desire inside of ourselves, and especially at work. So this is what even motivated, we're from our own organization that we started years ago, and the thing that motivated that originally was the fact that people are constantly trying to find a place where they fit, and fit means a whole bunch of things. Some of it, the world wants you to think it's just about finding the place where, like, your skills match whatever your job is, and that's actually a part of it, but it's only a small part of it. There's way bigger parts of it that involve, is it helping you achieve the goals that you care about most? Do you like the social? Is it giving you the social setting that you want to be in or not? Do you even care about the social settings? There's lots of different things that go into that. And we're going to keep seeing this with AI, is we're going to keep needing to disentangle the places where the human to human connection is the important part, and other forms of validation that don't even have to be from humans are important. So when I when I give a prompt to ChatGPT to be brutal on my writing, and it's brutal, but then it compliments me on something, like that compliment like lights me up, because I go, I know, like, it means something. It's not because you're a human, it's because I can see you as a more unbiased. Now you got to prompt for that, because it's going to be very complimentary out of the box. That's what it's designed to do. But if you prompt it to be more honest, more brutal, only give me the stuff that's actually good, that's good, and also tell me things that's bad. When you get the bad stuff, you're not ashamed of it, because there's not that social aspect of it. You're just like, hey, that's useful, thanks. But you're not embarrassed in front of ChatGPT. But when the good stuff, you trust it, and you are grateful. And it builds me up, even though I know it's a robot. It's because part of what I want in my life is people to care about me and to feel loved, and to have these social relationships. Another part is I want to actually know, am I good at anything? Am I doing a good? Am I enough? Right? Those sorts of questions. And we usually get most of that, or get a lot of that through social settings, but we don't just get it through social settings, all of it, right? There's a million other places where we use external frameworks to help measure. If you ran an 8-minute mile 6 months ago, and you ran a 7.5-minute mile last month, and you run a 7-minute mile, in 3 months from now, that's a form of progress that isn't coming from a human, but you're still proud of, because it's showing you, progress, I am something. And so AI, we're already seeing AI can be useful at helping to give you feedback, and notice things. And you can use this in work as managers. You can use this, as long as it doesn't seem sycophantic, which means, when you imagine like a king or a queen, and all the people who want to be around them because they're going to make them rich and famous, and they're just always telling them how great they are. That's sycophancy. That people don't trust. Even kids don't trust it. We have good studies coming out of juvenile psychology that show that parents who are only ever saying encouraging things on everything, even when it's a total lie, it doesn't help the kids. It doesn't hurt them, but it doesn't help them, because the kids can tell it's a lie. They're like, yeah, I got a C on that. Don't tell me that was a great job. When I could do better. No, if C was better than they were expecting to do, they might feel proud of it. But this is that thing in going, AI can fill a function, even knowing it's AI, that doesn't have to be human, if it's recognizing, hey, that was really good. You did a good thing there. Good job. If it really was a good thing, and people will appreciate it. And then there's a separate thing from that, when a person is going out of their way to show, I care about you. I see you. You are valuable to me. I recognize your worth, those sorts of things. That's the human side of it. So we actually are going to see increasingly a clearer differentiation between those two sources of validation, in unhealthy ways sometimes, but also in very healthy ways. Is this article that I wrote better than the version I gave you 2 weeks, 2 days ago when we started? Here's what was better. Good job. That was awesome. You actually screwed this part up, though. It's worse. That makes me feel good, even though it's not coming from a human, because I go, hey, trusted source. I like it. Right. So there's a lot of opportunity here, that doesn't even just replace humans. In that case, it's augmenting possibilities. It's because it's giving us a chance to notice, which is something ChatGPT or AI is very good at. It's very good at noticing, and even that can be, some parts of that can be automated in very valuable ways. But if it totally replaces the human side, that's going to be lonely progress. And you don't just want lonely progress alone. You want progress and a warm, social, supportive environment.
Absolutely. Dave, right on the same thread, would love to talk a little bit more about ethical considerations in the workplace that we should be aware of with AI, and things that you've seen in your research.
Yeah. So this is, there's two different directions coming from this. One is individuals using AI, and there's always ethical questions to be asked, but there's less of them than when an organization is using AI. right? Because for example, if you want an amazing product that can notice whenever people do good things and show them, that also means that you have an AI product that is literally watching everything a person ever does, right? And so there are ethical considerations that you have to bake into that. And this is going to be increasingly true with every place that AI comes, because AI can sort of just gobble up all information. That can be used for tremendously good purposes. Like, you can imagine a world even in a few years from now, there are people who have products like this, even a workco might, I don't know, right now, where you're just sort of watching these little day-to-day interactions and getting a little signal. This person is going downhill all of a sudden. You're seeing sentiment analysis, right? That stuff can get really powerful and really good, but it also means that there's going to be a central repository of everything that people have done, everything that people have said, everything that every joke, everything. That then opens up a whole different conversation on what we are willing to do and how open we are with that information, or how open we are with both that information, what we're going to use it for, how constrained it is, because something that can be used to something that's watching everything can be great at recognizing, but can also be great at doing firings, or it can also be great at being leveraged to find ways that if you're a manager and you want to fire somebody, just go through and find everything bad they've done in the last 3 years and then make a list, be like, look how terrible they are, right? So this is a big, important question, where we have to go, how do we build safeguards to use all this information that we're collecting in a way, because that's the thing, that the magic of AI is based on how much information it gets. The more information, the more magic it can do. But that magic can be dark magic. We can go Sith, or we can stay Jedi, and that's not going to naturally stay on one side or the other, unless we build very clear safeguards as a company, on how we're using it and what we're using it for, and what we will never use it for, what we won't look at it for, those sorts of things. And so those are the biggest questions, I think, for companies is what are you going to do? What information are you collecting, and what are you going to do with it? Because it's clear that the more information that you get, the more you can do. How do you make sure that you're only doing things that your people think are good, and that are unethical, or that your employees are uncomfortable with? And that's going to have to be it has to be part of the conversation every time you want to leverage every AI. And then I would encourage you to be extremely open with it, because then people won't wonder what else are they doing with this. They'll have a very clear promise and a guarantee, that says, here's what we are and are not going to do with this information. Anything that we collect, this is only the good stuff, right? It's only the blue lightsaber, not the red lightsaber. And then then we're good. But it's a good question. At the individual level, it's more like case by case, but it's not as much where there's one huge question, because the individuals don't get to gather that much information on their coworkers. They get to do more things like say, am I going to let it answer this email for me and not say, or whatever. And those are like, decide on an individual basis. We'll all figure out what norms work for us as a workplace. But at the organizational level, that's where we have to take more care, because we will have more power.
I love that, Dave. With great power comes great responsibility. So
there you go.
To quote some famous people.
Yes. With great surveillance comes great responsibility in this case.
That's right. That's right. Well, curious if there's any, I know some questions have come in, any questions or last thoughts that we all have about this wonderful and exciting topic that we've discussed today.
As we let questions come in and kind of wait for those to come in and wait for more of them to come in, JD, I wonder if you might just briefly touch on what WorkFit DX does, and so we can let people know about that, and if they're interested, they can contact you for some more information.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Bronson. I know we'll have a poll there at the end where you can say if you are interested to learn more and receive a free demo. What we do, I mentioned at the beginning, our mission statement to change lives by building healthy workplace cultures. It's something that's not just words we believe in. I saw, as a healthcare operator at a hospital, that when we focused on the people, when we recognized them and we built healthy cultures, we drove results and we changed lives. Time and time again with the many different departments that I worked with, from our OR team to our housekeeping team, it was amazing to see how we could best do that. And this tool that Dr. Dixon has developed, and Dave, please jump in. It helps to diagnose. Well, Dave, I'll let you talk directly about the tool from the maker himself.
Sure. Yeah, the original impetus behind WorkFit was for people to find positions that gave them what they wanted right now. Because in reality, personality tests and anything like a personality test is actually snake oil regarding finding a good job. Every accountant doesn't have the same personality. Every, banker doesn't have the same, every social media influencer. Like, there's so many different personalities and strengths that can be leveraged across a lot of things. And me and a professor at BYU named Dr. Bednar, we worked for a long time on sort of figuring out, why do some people love their jobs and have really high levels of job satisfaction, even when they report that they don't like what they do at their jobs? Because we thought that was why people love their jobs. And what we discovered is that there's a lot more that goes into what people want out of their position, and that changes over time. It's more like buying a car than getting married. Maybe right now I need a something that gets 60 miles to the gallon and holds 3 people. And maybe in 10 years, I need a Suburban that holds 8 people, right? So that's what we put together is a way for both managers to be able to find people who are a good fit for this position right now, where it matches what they want out of it. And for people to sort of think through dynamically over time at any point, what this individual position, how it matches with what I'm looking for right now. And so we have sort of a proprietary way of diagnosing that, because we able to be more engaged in their jobs. The engagement rates are dismal, and this year they've started down again. After 3 or 4 years of kind of growth, very slow engaged. We're talking like 20% of people are engaged at their work, but engagement brings satisfaction and brings joy. And so our goal is to try to increase that. At MIT, I work with a group called MIT Horizon, and we work with companies and training them and upskilling them on all sorts of things, mostly tech topics, mostly AI right now. And when I get to work with these companies and organizations, our clients that we're working with all the time, there's always that latent question behind it, which is sort of, how do we put people in positions where they can best succeed? And education is part of that, but fit matters, and trying to find the best place for fit, or the best way to establish fit, that needed a lot of work, because people were just doing it, almost like which Harry Potter house am I? Okay, I should be a forestry ranger, and we can do better than that. And so that's the goal behind it. There's a little blurb on that, but yeah, it's all based the same thing we've been talking about today, and the same thing that AwardCo is trying to do, which is essentially make human work more humane, and help companies take better care of their people, because companies are geared explicitly to make sure that the people are taking good care of the company, and we want to make sure that it goes the other direction around as well.
I love that, Dave. Very well said. And that same test that can be administered to an organization to get a pulse on their culture. And then, like Dave mentioned, partnering with companies like AwardCo to come in and provide some wonderful solutions to create a even healthier culture and workplace for your employees and your team.
Yeah, perfect. Any last questions? I think everybody's questioned out, it seems. Yeah. Bronson, I might be missing something.
No, it would appear so. Thank you all for attending this webinar. We really appreciate it. If you are interested in learning more about WorkFit DX and their solutions there, look in the poll and just select yes, and we'll get in touch with you. Also, if you're interested in learning more about AwardCo and what we do specifically with our AwardCo Intelligence, employee rewards and recognition, things like that, you can click the Learn More About AwardCo button up in the top right, and we'll get in touch with you there as well. Thank you for attending this webinar. We really appreciate your time. We wish you all the best as you move forward with your programs and everything you're trying to do in your workplace. And we hope you have a great day. Thank you very much. And thank you, JD and Dave, for all your time and expertise. It has been a great conversation. Appreciate it.
A pleasure.
Thanks, y'all. Appreciate you.